Okay, I want you to picture something. It's midnight. You're at the edge of a cenote in the jungle. The air is thick, the water is black, and something slices past your ear, a whisper of a threat in the dark. Now let's flip the switch. It's high noon over the Andes. A shadow falls over you, and you look up to see a bird so enormous, it's turning daylight into a moving eclipse. Two totally different worlds, right? Two totally different shadows. But they hit you in the exact same place, right in your gut. So, let's get into why. Why do those two moments, the cenote at midnight and the mountain at noon, feel exactly the same deep down in your bones? That's the big question we're tackling today. We're gonna put myth and reality in the ring, head to head for a 6-round championship bout to see which overhead shadow really truly rules the sky and our imagination. All right, ding ding, round 1 is the tale of the tape. This is all about the origin stories. We're gonna meet our two contenders, figure out where they came from, and just get their basic stats up on the board. In this corner, fighting out of the shadowy underworld of Maya mythology, we have Camazotz, the night god. And in the other corner, hailing from the late Miocene epic, the undisputed heavyweight of the prehistoric skies, Argentavis magnificens, the Sky Titan. One is a story that breeds, the other is a fossil that actually flew. So let's start with the myth, Camazotz. The name literally means death bat. Pretty straightforward, right? In the sacred Maya text, the Popol Vuh, these things were spirits that served the lords of Shibaba. That's the underworld. They lived in the House of Bats, which was basically a trial for any heroes trying to pass through. So here's the key thing to get. Camazotz isn't just some monster. It's a gatekeeper, an enforcer of the rules between our world and the next. Now for the reality side of things. Argentavis magnificens, the magnificent Argentina bird, was very, very real. This thing was a giant teratorn that soared over South America about 6 million years ago. And I mean, you gotta forget everything you know about birds today. This creature was on a completely different scale, a true titan of its ecosystem. On to round 2, the arena. You know, a fighter is defined by their home turf, by their territory. So now we're gonna look at the unique environments that these two titans didn't just live in, they absolutely owned them. Camazotz's domain is the cenote. These are these amazing limestone sinkholes where the ground just collapses and reveals the groundwater below. For the ancient Maya, this was their only source of fresh water, so it was life. But spiritually, it was a portal to Xibalba, the underworld. The cool air, the echoes, the sudden darkness. I mean, the place itself is writing the script for your fear. It's the perfect stage for a creature of the night. Argentavis commanded a totally different arena, the sky itself. Specifically, the air currents flowing over the Andes Mountains. It mastered what are called thermal updrafts, these columns of hot air that rise up from the sun-baked ridges. For a bird this massive, flapping its wings was a huge energy cost. But these thermals, that was free energy. It turned the geometry of the mountains into a runway to the clouds. Let's get to round 3, where form really defines function. We're looking at the silhouette, that physical shape that casts the shadow. This round is all about the mechanics of flight and what it actually takes to own the air. Just let that number sink in for a second. 23 feet. That was the wingspan of Argentavis. That is not a bird, my friends. That is a Cessna. To give you some perspective, the Andean condor, which is one of the biggest flying birds alive today, has a wingspan of maybe 9-10 feet. Argentavis just absolutely dwarfs it. It's not even a contest. Now this is where it gets really interesting, because how they flew was fundamentally different. A bat, where Camazotz, flies on its hands. It's a membrane stretched between these long, incredibly agile fingers. That whole setup is built for maneuverability, for darting around in tight, cluttered spaces, like a cenote. But Argentavis, it flew on a stiffened arm with feathered wings. It was built to lock in place and just soar super efficiently over huge distances. So one is a fighter jet, the other is a strategic bomber. Round 4 is all about the hunger. What drives these creatures? What gets them out of bed in the morning or out of the cave at night? Here we're looking at a symbolic appetite versus a very real biological need. What you eat defines who you are. The hunger of Camazotz isn't about food, it's about power and ritual. In the Popol Vuh, it famously decapitates one of the hero twins, Hunahpu, and his head gets used as a ball in a divine game. See? This isn't about calories. It's a symbolic hunger that enforces respect for the gods and for the boundaries of the underworld. It patrols that razor's edge between thirst and terror.
Argentavis, on the other hand, had a much more practical hunger. It was governed by a strict energy budget. Now, scientists still debate if it was a predator or scavenger, but most agree it was totally opportunistic. It would just use that incredible soaring ability to scan massive territories for carcasses. For this bird, glide is profit, flapping is dead. Simple as that. Its sheer size meant it could just show up, intimidate any other predators, and steal their kill. Efficient, patient, and utterly dominant.
All right, round 5, the weak spot. Every Titan has an Achilles heel, right? Now we're going to analyze the vulnerabilities, the chinks in the armor, and the defense strategies used against both the myth and the real-world beast. So how do you defend yourself against a death god? You do it with ritual. The Maya burned copal resin, and that fragrant smoke would reveal the air currents. They tied red knots as reminders not to lean over the edge of the cenote. These weren't just superstitions, you know? They were a kind of risk management, teaching caution around a very dangerous place. It's like village judo. You redirect the threat of the night instead of challenging it head-on. Argentavis's weaknesses were written by the laws of physics. Those massive wings that were its greatest asset were also a huge liability in the wrong conditions. Flat, calm air with no thermals, it's grounded. Tight canyons? No way, it can't maneuver. Strong crosswinds could be an absolute disaster. And taking off from flat ground? Forget about it, nearly impossible. This Titan was basically unbeatable, but only in its chosen arena, and only on its own terms. And here we are, the final round. Round 6, the legacy. How have the fear of Camazotz and the facts of Argentavis echoed through time? What did they actually leave behind for us? This slide really just nails their different impacts. The legacy of Camazotz is a cultural one. It's a story that acts as a safety manual, embedding caution and respect right into the collective memory of a people. The legacy of Argentavis is scientific. Its fossils are a straight-up physics lesson in biomechanics, teaching us about the absolute outer limits of what's possible for avian flight. So, we've seen their origins, their arenas, their power, their weaknesses. After 6 hard-fought rounds, it is time for a decision. Who wins this championship of the sky? Myth or reality? Let's go to the scorecard. Okay, for raw power, that has to go to Argentavis. That size is just undeniable. For efficiency, again, Argentavis and its mastery of soaring flight, no question. Now, intimidation, that's a tough one, but I'm gonna give it to Camazotz. The fear of the unknown, of what's in the dark, that is powerful stuff. For influence on human behavior, Camazotz again, hands down. But for legacy, the tangible, physical proof you can hold, it has to be Argentavis. And with a final score of 3-2, our champion is clear. And the winner is Argentavis. Reality edges out myth. But listen, the crucial point here isn't really about who wins or who loses. It's about what both of these titans teach us. They represent 2 completely different systems of survival. One is encoded in story, the other is encoded in bone. You could say that fear writes the headline, but paleontology supplies the footnotes. So what do you take away from all this? Here's your field kit, 3 simple moves. First, learn to read the air like Argentavis. Plan your day around ascent and glide. Do the heavy lifting when your personal thermals are rising, when you have the energy. Second, read the dark like a Maya villager. Manage the edges, the light, the echoes in your own environment. Be aware. And third, know the difference. Respect the myth, respect the story, but always, always operate on the map of reality. And that leaves us with one last question for you to think about. A cenote's darkness or an Andean sun? Is it the symbolic fear that guides your caution, or is it the physical limit that defines your path? So look up. Which overhead shadow is ruling you today, and what's your next move gonna be?